Welcome. I think we've spoken to most of you. How did the mentoring sessions go? Good? Good stuff? Okay. I think you're doing good.
Yeah.
In general, you want just keep grinding, keep going through the notions on. So what we're gonna do today, I think today is probably the most important content that we'll talk about, to me at least, throughout. If you need to remember one thing from these 2 months, just remember this hour today. Yes. Tell everyone in your group to go back, watch this hour, and pay attention to this content. It is the heart of what we're doing, and it is the heart of market validation, and it is some really, really helpful tools that help bring some system and some visual aid to something that used to be a lot harder to do. Yeah, so it's still us, so we haven't changed. So you're still stuck with us. Before we jump, I want to ask you, do you know what a business model is? I don't want to assume that we all know. So who knows what a business model is? See a show of hands. Cool. Okay, so not everyone. That's good. You're in the right place. So I heard someone, Ran used to describe it this way. Oh, Nikhil is doing that.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we got some. Thanks, Nikhil, for letting people in. So that's Nikhil, by the way. He's one of our ventures ambassadors. So if you need help with anything, you can come to us, but you can also ask Nikhil. He knows his way around absolutely ventures and entrepreneurship wise as well. So a business model is, we call it a tool that will help you understand what type of things. Have you seen sort of an IKEA manual? Yeah, so this is sort of could be an IKEA, it is actually IKEA manual. So what does an IKEA manual does? What does it do? So you have all these pieces and you get the manual. What does it do?
It helps you to assemble.
It helps you to assemble. What else does it do?
Gives you all the bits to assemble.
Sorry?
Gives you all the bits to assemble.
Yeah, so you have all the pieces. It tells you how to put them together. It tells you how it's going to look at the end. Yeah, you have pictures. This is how it's supposed to look like once you build it. Yes, it tells you an order. So first you do this, then you do that. Then it's going to look like that. It never looks like this. I always end up with like a piece of wood, like a big piece of wood. And I look at the piece and I'm like, this is supposed to go somewhere, but there's no more room in whatever I built, right? But that's to how they build, or my intelligence maybe, or how they build these things. But so a good way of thinking of a business model, it is sort of this map or this manual that will help you understand what goes into your business and what's supposed to come out, and what resources come into play in your business, right? And how they interact between each other. So that was not a very clear explanation of what a business model is, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. But what's important, it's like your engine. It's like the engine of your business. You need to have a clear understanding of what's your business model. So what are the parts of your business, how they interact, what resources go in, and what resources go, what value comes out of the business. Yes? Questions? You can tell me you didn't understand that. That's okay. Okay, we'll work on this. So why do we need a business model? Why do we need an IKEA manual?
It provides a common language.
Yes, absolutely. That I had not thought about that actually. So common language, so it's great. So you can go talk to an investor and they'll ask for a business model, and we all know what that is. Or you can show it to someone that can help you work on your business model. We all know what that is. So that's a great one. Why else? Why do we need a business model?
Helps you stay on track.
Stay on track. What else?
To know how you're going to grow over time.
To know how you're going to grow. Yes. Yes, so ensure that the business is profitable. What else does it help you ensure?
It'll give you a bit more certainty, or at least minimize uncertainty with where this is going.
Why?
Well, because if you don't have a business model, it's not very well defined.
So it helps define.
Yeah,
That's what I was going there. Yeah, perfect, right? So it helps you define what does your business do, what it doesn't do, and then you can figure out how it's going to grow and where it's going to take you. Yes, what are the pieces and how they interact. Now, business models used to be like 40, 50 pages. I've never seen this actually because I got into entrepreneurship. I don't know if it happened to you, but I already was part of the business model canvas sort of wave. But I've been told there used to be these 40 pages, and I'm sure you need to put this still together eventually, of where you describe what happens, right? So we use these resources, and then these resources go through these processes. We need all these things to make it work and to process it. And then this is the value we are creating for our customers. This is how we sell it. This is how we capture the value and we turn it into revenue. And these are our costs. And this is like a long line of very thick documents. And so this group of people came up with a different way of thinking about business models, which is called the business model canvas. What the business model canvas does, it's very similar to like a shorter, smaller manual. And the way you read this, there's numbers. So there's a bit of an order to this, yes? But always, and what's important, and it's important for any business model, is that you need to be very clear what's your value proposition, and that's at the center of whatever you do, yes? So why are you going to do this? What is the value that you're providing to your customers, yes? And then, of course, you work with your customers. So you go from your value proposition to your customers. And then what 3 and 4 do, which is your customer relationship and your channels, is they regulate how you interact with your customers, yes? So you have your value proposition. How is that value adding value to your customers? Who are your customers? What are the segments? And then how are you going to relate to your customers? And what are the channels through which you talk to your customers or you reach your customers? So that's the customer side. And then over this side, you have your resources side, yeah? So how are you going to produce what you say you're gonna make? So who are your key partners? What type of suppliers do you need? What type of materials do you need? And then what type of activities are you gonna have? So is it a manufacturer? Yeah, do you need to pay for software? And the key resources, what are they going to give you? Yeah, is it knowledge? Is it some raw material? So the value, the customers, your partners, and these things in the middle are how you start to sort of interact with them. Yes. Does that help with? Sometimes this is a bit of feels like they just rearranged the squares in whatever order, but there's a method to this. Then you have your costs and your revenue here at the bottom, which are also very important. So what's really cool about the business model canvas is that very fast, you can tell if you missed something. Because you start to fill this out. So you fill out the value proposition, then you fill your customers, which are the obvious. Then you can fill your partners, and then you have your key resources, but you never thought about what's the activities that your partners are going to do. How are you going to, what type of relationship are you going to have? Is it a supplier? Is it a reseller? Are you keeping track of this information? Or you figure out the customers' sort of channels. So are you going to reach them through social media? Yes, but what type of relationship do you want with them? Maybe we missed that. So number one, the business model canvas is a really great tool to very fast, at a glance, realize what you have and what you don't. And at a glance, also sort of check if what you have is sort of robust enough, right? If your value proposition is all over the place, you can read it very fast. You don't have to go through pages in opposition to like a thick manual, right? Something really cool also about the business model canvas is don't think of this as a set on stone. So it will evolve as you evolve your business or your idea of a business. So you'll start with a value proposition that might change. You might start working with a customer segment that might change. You might start to think about partners, and then that will change. So you will have as many business model canvas as iterations of your business there are. Yes, so it is a very cool way of just throwing away a piece of paper, writing down what you want to take with you, get rid of what doesn't work, fit it in with new information, and keep sort of iterating and evolving your business model. So it is a really great tool to start to use, to start to keep in mind. Some of you, I think, sort of there online have already started to work with the business model canvas. It is a really great first step to know what are the type of things you need to be thinking about your business. Have you heard of this notion of product market fit? Anyone who heard this? What is it? What do we mean with product market fit?
Lots of people buying your product and they're happy and they're telling it to their friends about it.
Yeah.
And the product you are producing can actually address the problem in the market.
Yes. So you're selling you have customers, you're solving a problem. So if you don't solve the problem, then you don't really have customers.
Your product's so good you can't keep up with the demand.
Oh, okay. I would say it's a fit if you're selling your product already, right? Like if you don't keep up with the demand, that's even better, right? But there's still a fit if you can't keep up with the demand as well.
Yeah, I guess it's like, how specific do you want to be on product market fit? Are you talking about the perfect product for people or a product that people are willing to test out?
I just mean that your product is solving a problem that people have and that they're paying to get that problem solved with the product you're providing. Okay. That's me.
Is it related with the size too of the market, or
not that I
it's only
know?
for the problem?
It's mostly around the problem, right? So is your product a good fit to satisfy what the market is demanding, which is usually has to do with the problem or the wants sometimes.
So what would be an example of a bad product market fit?
Segways?
It's funny, I was thinking the same thing.
Segways? Have you seen segways on the street?
And what about it doesn't fit?
So what happened? I don't know. I didn't put it, and I took it away from the kickoff. We usually used to talk about segways. So the story with segways is really interesting. I'm gonna sit down, sorry guys. No, the people online. I need to keep my. So segways. Move it over here. So segways. Do you know the story of the Segway? Anyone? So it's cool. You know the story? Yeah. Oh, Segway? Okay, help me fill this out because I saw it, but I want to make sure that I tell it properly. So what happened? Segway was this really cool technology, right? So they came up with this cool technology, this self-balancing 2 wheels, super cool. Steve Jobs tried it, told them this is the next sort of best thing. This is the next thing. He invested a lot of money in the company. It's like a case study, like how come someone so intelligent? Then what happened was they went to market and they offered Segway to people. This really cool thing. What happened? How many Segways do you see in the street?
Well, also mind you, that was back in like 2000, early 2000.
Yes.
It was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Like,
they had a good chance to prove it, right? So what happened, what they found is it was very expensive. So people were not willing to pay for that. The streets were not really ready for Segways. So they're too wide. And people were also finding it a bit sort of unsettling, this notion of leaning forward. I've never been on one, but there was a problem with the habits. This is the research I started to do. It's like, because like, it seemed like a perfectly good product. And so it wasn't really solving a problem. And it was too expensive. It was too new. And so it didn't really find the market. So it was not a good fit. In contrast, we see electric scooters everywhere, which seems to do something similar, but it is much more relatable. It is something like a bit more stable, and it has addressed, right? So it's a bit more maneuverable. It works better on the pathway, that's the pathwalks we already use. Instead, the Segway, and this was 20 years ago, so mind you, maybe if it was a technology these days, maybe it would have been different. You couldn't use it on the street because it was too slow and unsafe. It was too big for the pathways. So you see how it's this thing that would not quite fit anywhere. And too expensive for people, yeah.
So before you said if you make sales, then you have product market fit. But
Yes.
Segway made sales, but it's not a product market fit.
True, that's a good point. So Segway did find a market. So it all depends on what's your market. So Segway ended up selling Segways to shopping mall cops and airports.
So I think, at least in my view, like product market, like you can sell stuff, but still not have product market fit. For me, product market fit is like when you look at your sales or revenue and you're like this, and then you're like this. Like that point here is where you find your product market fit. It's like all of a sudden, like exponentially, you're starting to be much better. Because you're able to crack the code, you're solving the problem somehow in a very efficient way, you're able to scale it. Yeah, at least that's how I look at it.
So it does have to do with what Derek was saying around, like you can't keep up with the demand.
So I mean, hopefully you can, but
Yeah.
you're definitely feeling like all of a sudden like, whoa, this like went from like, it definitely goes in an exponential fashion.
Like an element of virality.
Whatever it is. I mean,
Something
not
just
always,
takes
but yeah.
Cool. Yes, my take is like, and mind you, this is look, if you I don't want to get too much into this. I think you have a point though, Derek. If you sell and you can make your sort of revenue and your costs work out, which is something that Segway couldn't work out, right? Because it was too expensive, so it couldn't sell enough, maybe. But if you make it profitable and sustainable, then I'd say you have a fit to solve the market needs, right? And I see how you would be thinking of exponential technology, but I think if there's no cafes in a neighborhood and the cafe goes there and it has the size that's just enough to address everyone's cafe's needs, coffee needs, then I'd say there's a product market fit. So
I guess it's also, I mean, we're talking about it in a startup perspective,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Not this small business perspective. So
Yeah.
in the startup perspective, it's that point where you get that inflection point, because startup, it's all about like doing something repeatable and scalable.
Yes.
Would that same kind of talent be expected for a B2B startup?
Say it again?
Would the same kind of value?
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're selling to customers or to businesses. I mean, they're all customers, just different types of customers.
Yeah, but sometimes the product can fit the market, but then you are not making money. There's no revenue out of that. So a typical example is Google. When Google started, they actually had a fantastic product, but then they struggled with their revenue model. How to charge.
Same happened to Facebook. When they started to go to mobile, until they created the stories, they feed it to you in the stories. Yes, absolutely. That's why the business model canvas and sort of the business model is so important. Does everyone know the difference between why we're talking about startup and small businesses? Sometimes this is.
Yeah, I suppose startups, the difference between small businesses is that like you can go to the bank and get a big loan for a small business because like the market is so steady and like already researched and knowable that they can say, okay, you've got this model into this market. But with a startup, if there's like you're doing something new, and so there's a lot more uncertainty.
There's more uncertainty. It's scalable. It's repeatable.
Yeah. So yeah, like a small business will remain a small business. Like it doesn't have the it cannot grow into basically, at least in my view, the definition of startup is something that can be scalable. You're doing something that can be repeatable and can turn into something very big without the necessity to have many thousands of people like to service your customers.
And something important to clarify is it's not a requisite that your current idea is a startup. Okay, so if you're thinking of a sort of small business type of thing, that's okay. Validate is sort of inclusive for all of these type of ideas, yes? Then if you go to accelerators and stuff, they'll be looking after startup type of solutions. Yeah? Cool, do you want to add anything else?
No.
Okay. Okay, so again, the business model canvas, we're going to start to talk a little bit about the value proposition canvas. So what the strategizer guys realized who designed the canvas was that people were struggling with the value proposition on the customer segment, which is sort of the base of the business model. And so they realized that we needed to focus and we needed to create a new tool. And so they created what they call the value proposition canvas. What this does is it focuses on what's the value that you're creating for your customer and who is your customer. And you want to start with your customer when you start to work with your value proposition canvas. You will have as many value proposition canvases as customer segments you have. So this is important, yes? So you might have 5, 6, 10, 12, 20, however customer segments you think you want to work with. Ideally, you start with one segment to focus on. I think, did I explain it? There's a video, so that's going to be a lot better explained than if I explain it. So I'm going to play the video.
Every day, companies design products and services to improve their customers' lives. But 72% of new product and service innovations fail to deliver on expectations. This means that customers don't care about 7 out of 10 new products introduced to the market. It doesn't have to be this way. Just like you create value for your business with a business model canvas, there is in fact a tool to intentionally visualize, design, and test how you create value for customers. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas. The Value Proposition Canvas is composed of 2 parts, the customer profile and the value map. With the customer profile, you describe the jobs your customers try to get done. Jobs can be functional, like getting from A to B, social, like impressing friends and colleagues, or emotional, like gaining peace of mind. You highlight your customers' pains, which annoy customers while trying to get a job done. Pains and negative outcomes that customers hope to avoid, like dissatisfaction with existing solutions and challenges, frustrations, risks, or obstacles related to performing a job. And you outline customer gains, which describe how customers measure the success of a job well done. Gains are positive outcomes that customers hope to achieve, like concrete results, benefits, and even aspirations. Use the customer profile to visualize, test, and track your understanding of the people or companies you intend to create value for. It's a map that becomes clearer the more you learn about your customers. The second part of the canvas is the value map. With it, you list the products and services your value proposition builds on. You describe in which way these products, services, and features are pain relievers, how they eliminate, reduce, or minimize pains customers care about, making their life easier. And you outline in which way they are gain creators, how they produce, increase, or maximize outcomes and benefits that your customers expect, desire, or would be surprised by. The value map makes explicit how your products and services relieve pains and create gains. Use it to design, test, and iterate your value proposition until you figure out what resonates with customers. You achieve fit by creating a clear connection between what matters to customers and how your products, services, and features ease pains and create gains. Great value propositions target essential customer jobs, pains, and gains, and do so extremely well. Your customer profile may contain countless jobs, pains, and gains, but your value map highlights which ones you intend to focus on. Don't forget, An outstanding value proposition can still fail if your business model is flawed. Successful companies embed outstanding value propositions for scalable and profitable business models. Use the value proposition canvas to create products and services that customers want. Get started at strategizer.com.
All right. So ultimately, what you want to understand is how you can provide a value for the company so that they get money in exchange. So it is fundamental that you are creating value to the end user, but then it is important that you understand how that is valuable for whoever has to pay for that, right? So if you make an operator's job easier, you are giving them value. But then how is that value translatable at an organizational level? So so that would be translated into less attrition rates, less happier employees, better performance. So all these things I would put in a different value proposition canvas that I would keep track for the customer. Does that make
So
sense?
just pretend they're two different customer segments.
Sort of. Strangely, I'm feeling like leaning towards whoever's going to pay for it as well. You need to keep track. That's a great question. Yes, let's go. First, Mo.
Yeah, so in your case, you can test different aspects of the business model. So the customer segment are your end user, but then when companies make a new model, then you go to those who want to pay and also see whether they can pay the amount that you go to charge for. So you test different aspects of the business model.
Yeah.
I ran into the same thing with my project because it's very similar in that it's the users are not the ones paying for it. I found it's easiest to do both. Just like do one for the people like the company or whatever, and do one for the users because it has to provide value to both. So
Yeah.
Right, the reality is that if you create a product that's, okay, the company pays for it, but the end user is the engineer or whatever it is, but the engineer hates using the product. He's not going to use it, you're not solving the problem. On the flip side, if you're only thinking about the engineer, you're solving their problem, but you know, it costs so much that the company, like it doesn't make sense for the company to actually buy this product, you're not solving the problem, right? So it does need to take both into account.
So if you want to go crazy with this, and this I have tried, not going crazy, but so you could have one, because it's the same feature that's going to address ideally two different pains. So you can link two different to the same products and see how the same feature is addressing. It actually might be addressing the same problem, but it just has different words for different roles, right? So you're addressing what could be an easier job. It can translate into higher productivity, but it is in practice the same sort of problem that you're solving, I think.
Yeah.
So
I'll play around with it.
I've done that. Yes, I've done that even with thinking about value for the world also. So you can play a lot. This is not the be all end all. So it has some pitfalls and some challenges, but it's there to play with it. Happy to send me emails and we'll brainstorm together. Something like I have no answer to that. I read that. So this is an Uber example that we can explore really fast, just so you have an example to think about this. So the customer jobs that Uber wants to work on is contacting a good taxi service. It's controlling the cost of the ride. So that's another job. So when you have, so the ultimate job is to go from point A to point B, right? And then there's smaller jobs there. You have to wait for the cab for some amount of time, a known amount of time, which is important. You have to pay for the trip, so that's another job you have to do as you move from point A to point B. And I would argue, even though this is created by the very people who designed the business model canvas, there's emotional jobs, right? So you want to feel safe, maybe in some countries. So it's not the same to take a taxi than an Uber. Maybe an Uber is safer. In an Uber, you can see the face of the person. There's the rating that, so there's some other emotional jobs that are in play as well. So the gains, you can track your cab, right? Which you cannot do with a taxi, or you couldn't used to be able to do. One-click order and cancellation, so it's really fast. Another gain that would be cool to have is this 0 time on payment, so you don't have to give money and you get the change, and so that's a bit of a hassle. And the trusted driver, that's another gain. So again, don't think, because we already know the features of Uber, but try to think of just the gains, extra things that they would be getting that would be helpful for people as you move from point A to point B. Pains, so the low cab availability, right? When you have to take a taxi, if it's raining, it's low availability, you're waiting there. You need to book a cab in advance because you don't want to risk it. You don't know when a cab is going to go sort of drive by. Bad drivers happen, so you cannot control if it's a good taxi driver or not. And there are issues with the payment, right? So sometimes there's no card, like in Argentina, maybe now there's cards, but when I left, it was all cash. So if you have like a $50 thing and you have to pay like a $5.80, and then you start a fight with a taxi driver because they're like, oh, you don't have any change. You have to go find, literally, and this happens, you will drive to like a drugstore to find, go buy candies to get smaller bills from the 50, and then you give it. This is the true story. So you can see how this can be a pain for people. Yes. On this side, what we start to see is how are you creating the gains and how are the pains being relieved. So we'll share the slides so you can go into detail, right? But just a few examples. This 24/7 availability of cabs is immediately addressing the need to book in advance. So you don't need to book in advance anymore. There's always an Uber available. The flawless automatic payment, so you book it and it all gets sorted out on the app. Immediately addresses the issue of paying when you finish the trip with a taxi, not to mention the fraud, or sometimes they want to trick you when you're on vacations, right? So very, very important that you don't add features that are not addressing a clear pain or a gain. Sometimes we start to design these things and we just add things because we think it's cool. No, okay? So we want to add things that have a purpose. Yes, and this is a really great way to track if your features have a purpose, and that's how you sort of slowly start to build up to have a higher chance of having a fit and to be actually solving the problems.
I will add to that I mean, you know, we're looking at Uber as an example, but like any one of those like successful services that we use, they didn't start by being a mainstream product. Like when Uber started, very few people knew what Uber was, and I suspect that Uber probably like focused on a certain niche of the market, like people who might be very busy, or you know, maybe rides within cities where it's very difficult to find a taxi. So again, like they didn't start on day one by trying to, we all now use Uber, it's like a mainstream solution, but it doesn't start this way. So what this does, it forces you to really try to figure out who your beachhead market is, what segment of the market you want to focus on, and then forces you to go and speak to those people and try to understand what is it like. Explain the problem to me. Explain, you know, what are the pains, what are the gains, what objective you're trying to achieve, and based on that, and you know, with a very small segment of the market, you try to design a solution that will solve that problem. If you're successful in solving it for a small group of people, then you start trying to basically figure out, okay, well now how can we service more people or a larger segment of the market. The one thing one should really avoid doing is try to come up with solutions based on like what you think is cool or necessary, or like, oh, this will solve a big problem for a lot of people. It just doesn't work this way. So it's like everything that you do in terms of like trying to solve the problem should be based on like the conversations that you have with actual people who have that kind of problem. I can tell from experience that, like, you know, the number of assumptions that we made on like what will make a cool listening experience was like the amount of features and things that we thought that we should build and actually went on building and realizing that there were like always time was large, unfortunately. And you can really save yourself a lot of time and resources by well, really just talking to your customers.
I think that's a great, yeah.
How do we keep track of this if you go out and talking to customers?
Awesome, because that's what I was going to say. So this is a great segue to talk about how I will put up, this is there's a template, like a PDF you can print. And ideally, as you start to talk to potential customers, this is the information you want to start to capture. What are their pains? What type of gains could you provide them? And what are the jobs they need to perform? Yes? So this is why this tool is so great. It's because you can especially start to work on this and have one for each different segment. If you can focus on one segment from the get-go, but some of you are like, well, I need to explore if this will work in 2 or 3 different segments or industries. So keep separate ones and start to fill it out, and it will evolve. So you talk with one person, he'll tell you, oh, that's a pain. You talk to another person, they tell you, oh, that's a different pain. And you start to fill it out. And then it will start to inform what type of features does your product need, or what type of solutions does your product have to provide. Yes, something significant. Yes.
Another thing would be if you find yourself like you're talking to different customers and basically you're getting like, you know, just endless number of pain points, like different pain points. What it means is probably like you're talking to people from different segments. Like that, what you're trying to get to is that you are able to identify enough people, or like a large portion of the people that you talk to told you about the same kind of pain points, because only then you can really, you know, try to come up with a solution that will service large number of people, as opposed to like, oh, well, now I need to come up with 100 different solutions to all these 100 different pain points.
I was just, that's what.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's awesome. I was going to say that, right? Like, if you find yourself saying like, oh, well, my customer sometimes has this pain, but sometimes has this other pain, because you're going to start to write everything into the one circle, then that's a hint that you have different segments there, and you need to make a cut, and that's 2 different type of people, which is the same. So it's awesome.
So would you need a different value proposition for every customer segment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's why we focus on one segment at a time.
Exactly. And what Ram was saying is like, when you might think you have one segment, and when you start to talk to people, if they tell you very different pain points, then maybe there's another segment in there that you need to sort of separate again. Yes. So we went through these, so we're getting to the end, and we'll have some time for questions. I think we're doing good with time. Not really. I'll go fast. So really, the way to fill this out is to go talk to people. Yes, but like we mentioned, do it smartly. Don't. So be efficient with your resources. If you have you have a lot of time and that's your resource, go and talk to 100 people. If you have constrained with your resources, be smart. Try to get a couple of your customers in the same room at the same time and talk about that. Be mindful that they might be influencing each other, but sort of be smart at how you go about it. So it's not like you just have to go randomly. Talk to 100 people. Don't do 100 surveys, please. So in 3 weeks, we'll get together again, and we'll ask you how did it go. Don't show us survey results, please. Yes, we've talked about this a lot. Talk to people. You can do some surveys, but you will get a lot of richness from talking to people. So do interviews, okay? Do some interviews, as many as you can. Fill this out and see how it goes. Just as a reminder, okay? Make sure that you're listening, and it's not just an internal dialogue. Don't have an agenda, because then you're gonna miss out on things. It's always good to go into the conversation, keeping in track what type of biases you suspect you have. But you can do a lot of this after the interview. When you go back and you say, oh, this is interesting, but you need to have a lot of sort of power of sort of self-reflection and see how it went. Some have asked, so how do I ask? What's it stopped?
It stopped.
How about now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, cool. I don't know what's happening. Again, tell me more open-ended questions. Don't ask yes or no questions. Don't guide the answer. Don't ask them if they'll pay for it. Don't ask them if they would buy it. No, a great way of asking this, like, what's your experience with this problem? It's always good to understand experiences around things. Ask them why a lot. Why do you feel like that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think honestly, like the skill of like going out and interviewing potential customers or like learning about the problem is, in my opinion, perhaps like the most important one. Because again, if you're detached from the people that you're trying to solve the problem for, your odds of actually being able to fix the problem are minuscule. And for some reason, like, you know, I find that a lot of people find it difficult for different reasons to go and talk to people. And there are like, you know, many excuses one can make for not doing it. But the reality is, as you'll start doing it, you'll like, it just, the amount of information that you'll get out of it is really incredible. And the more customers you talk to, the better off, like basically all the conversations that we have and that you'll have about your business will turn from like, I think, or I assume, to I know, because I've talked to 100 people and 90 out of them told me that this is the problem that they're having with this, whatever, I'm just making this up. But basically it can get you from just an assumption to pretty much certainty that about any one of the things that you're trying to solve. And yeah, absolutely. Like the purpose of the interview is not to go in there and basically like come with their own assumptions and then ask questions that will validate that what you thought was right. On the contrary, you want to go in there like blank canvas and just learn everything that you can, and totally fine if you actually realize that it's the exact opposite of what you thought. That would be a good thing. And the way to do it is really like by letting the person in front of you do the talking.
I'm thinking how I will do this in practice. So should I print the canvas? Should I take my laptop, go and sit with the potential customer to talk, and as they talk, feel it?
So I would advise against that because you want to create a good conversation with the person in front of you. I prefer to have sort of like an idea of like the kind of questions I would like to ask, but then have a conversation. And if I ask you, when was the last time you went to a bookstore? Tell me about it. And you start telling me about that. And then you say something that is interesting that I never thought about. Tell me more about that and how did it happen? And so like a bunch of things that I didn't really plan on talking about. And now if I'm stopping the conversation to take notes, it kind of breaks the flow. But I would recommend like right after it, taking some notes of like, oh, what did I learn? Things that were interesting.
Okay.
Something that also happens that I find it's important, I don't think it's minor, is when you talk to people, you will start to pick up like quotes or experiences from people. So you'll be able to talk about the problem with a different type of language and with a different perspective versus statistics. And that will help you a lot when you have to pitch and when you have to talk about it to other people. If you tell them like, no, actually, like I met this lady and she has to do this every day. Like it's so frustrating to her. Or we spoke with this other guy. And so it's very different than telling people like, well, actually, do you know like 80% of the people have this problem? It's very different when they have a face. We'll talk about it when we pitch and we talk about pitching. I feel like that changes a lot. We're on the other side, so they pitch to you, right? So it does change.
Absolutely. Like if any one of you come and say, the difference between saying, I'm going to solve this problem. I think it's a problem, like, but that's it, as opposed to like, I've talked to 100 people and this is what they told me. Like, how do you argue with that? You can't, right? Like, you actually, like, that's like real information that you got from real people. They told you that's the problem. Yeah, it makes for a whole different page.
Yeah. Good, good. So use the tool. I think, so Ashley Hanger, she's now in iLab. She even presented the business model canvas in her pitch. So,
Right.
so it's very useful even to talk about it. Any final questions?
Have you heard of the lean canvas?
Yes, the business, it's like,
Yeah,
but it
it's
looks
like
like
that,
a
but
business.
slightly modified. And,
Yes.
Is there a disadvantage to using that over the business model canvas? Do you have any opinion on which one to use and why?
No, to be honest, I haven't. There's the social business model canvas as well, so people have started to play with it. Look, I think as long as it's the only risk is making sure that you keep like everything that you need is contained there. So I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
What does happen, and I don't know about the lean one, but the social business model canvas, for example, is that when you start to think about a social impact type of model, with these words, sometimes it doesn't quite fit, and you need to talk about different terms or different aspects, and so sometimes it doesn't quite do the job. I don't know about the lean.
I feel like the tool matters less. What matters more is the fact that you identify you try to identify the different segments, and that you go talk. Like, you know, however you want to. Yeah, that doesn't really matter. As opposed to, yeah, just making assumptions, building a bunch of products without like doing all that work. Which, by the way, like this is relatively new. Like, you know, maybe what, 15, 20 years?
Oh, so the value proposition canvas has like less than 5 years.
Right. But it like, so the old school of like, you know, doing like building software, and like they would actually like make all these assumptions and like build the whole thing and then ship it and then see if someone like, if it picks up or not. And that just like, yeah, then you can imagine like how many times products were shipped where they were just like complete failure. It just doesn't make any sense.
Good. You tired? Thanks
tired.
for hanging in there. Yes, I'm tired too today. I don't know why. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully that was helpful. If it was not, send me an email. We'll have a chat and I'll try to make it clear. I'm gonna put up this stuff in Blackboard. If you Google value proposition canvas, you'll find the PDF. I'll put the PDF as well in the Blackboard if you don't want to Google it. All right? We're good? Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone online. All right. I have to run. That's okay. All right. See ya. Thanks. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
No.